Hello YouTube, this is Let's Talk Horror and welcome back to another video. Okay guys, so I just watched the season finale of Welcome to Derry last night. We are going to talk about it, so I have some thoughts. I'm going to simply do a quick positive and negative review. I'm going to try to do this relatively quickly and I'm just going to rip the band-aid off, guys. While there was a lot I liked about this season finale, I have to say that at the end of the day, my feelings about the season finale and the way they ended this season are very mixed, but they lean more negative than positive. I'm sorry. And I am someone who has praised this show pretty much week after week after week. I have not had a lot of the same complaints about this show that a lot of people had, but this week I do. I did not love in some aspects how they ended this season, how they ended the show. I'm intrigued by some of the things they introduced, but I am mildly disappointed with the ending of the show. Not hugely disappointed, but mildly disappointed. But okay, the things I liked about this episode, guys, is as far as the intensity, as far as the scale, as far as the spectacle, this really felt like a season finale. This really felt like a major event. That was one of the things that I was worried about after last week was, okay, you have the Black Spot Fire in the penultimate episode. That was supposed to be the big event of this cycle. How are you going to match it? And I think they did a pretty good job. I liked a lot of the visuals. I liked a lot of the cinematography. I liked how these last two episodes went from a very hot setting and a very hot feel with the fire last week to a more colder feel, a colder setting with the fog and the snow and the whole battle on the ice. I liked all that stuff, and I thought the battle on the ice was good. I liked how finally the military portion of the story and the story with Leroy and Charlotte and Dick and the kids portion of the story, it all kind of converged into one objective where they're all at this point just trying to stop Pennywise, just trying to close this cage, keep him in Derry. I liked all of that. The whole thing about the dagger, that somehow the further you take it away from its home underneath the Neibold house, the more resistant it gets, the more it wants to go home. That felt like a little bit out of nowhere. That felt a little bit like contrived writing, but I was fine with it. It led to some interesting dynamics. They've kind of hinted that Lily has more of an attachment to the dagger than most people, maybe because of her mind and her state and her insecurities. She's more vulnerable. That opening scene, by the way, guys, was excellent. That opening scene with Pennywise. First of all, I loved how they jumped right into it. They didn't delay at all. They jumped right into it. The intensity was ratcheted up from the beginning. The fog comes rolling in. I like what the fog represents of like the evil spreading from Derry potentially to the rest of the world. Then we get to that school opening. Just again, fucking brutal, man. With calling that assembly and, taking that principal's head off. It was absolutely brutal. It was gory. I loved it. Got me immediately into the episode. I loved the part where Pennywise, in his little, moving like stage or whatever you call it, he's heading to, get out of Derry with those kids, floating in the air. I loved that visual. I loved everything on the lake, man. And as far as the ending itself, I thought the ending itself where they finally bury the dagger into the earth to kind of close the cage, having Rich help was quite emotional, and have him come back and his spirit kind of like help the kids close the cage, I thought was great. And that emotional like funeral speech Marge gave was excellent as well, quoting directly from the It book about, people who build houses in your heart. That's a direct quote from the It book. I in many ways, I did really like a lot of what they did at that funeral scene as well, with Dick talking to the parents and everything. So I didn't hate everything about the ending. I didn't even hate the ending, but, while it was certainly drawn out, that battle on the ice was pretty intense and pretty great. And, seeing Pennywise turn into that giant bird, even with the CGI, was excellent. And seeing General Shaw finally get his was great as well. So there was a lot I liked about it. There was a lot that lived up to the hype. Yeah, let's get into my more mixed to negative feelings about the episode. But okay, guys, and now it's time to get into my more mixed and negative reaction as well. By the way, I also loved the little cameo, Sophia Lillis. I loved the little epilogue thing as well. That was another good thing with Ingrid and Beverly. That was cool, kind of connecting it to It Chapter 1 again. But, okay, now on to the more somewhat divisive parts of this. Andy Muschietti, in lead up to this episode and lead up to the end of this season, did say that, look, there's going to be a reveal or a twist that explains why they are telling this story backwards. And spoiler alert, it is revealed pretty much that I don't know if it's time travel. I think I've heard it's not time travel, and I think I've heard the creators say it's not time travel, but that it's Pennywise. His version of time doesn't exist. He doesn't interpret time. He doesn't feel time like we feel time. His version of time is not linear. He exists simultaneously in the past, the present, the future. It is revealed in this episode that Marge is Margaret Tozier, but that he knows Richie Tozier is the one who kills him, and he knows his future. The big reveal, the twist, is that part of his motivation this entire season has been to prevent that. That none of this was random. He targeted Marge, he targeted Will, he targeted Teddy Uris to try and prevent the Losers Club from forming and eventually killing him. I think there's a lot they could do there. So I think in that way, it's very interesting, because now it pretty much been revealed that, you could kind of interpret this as a prequel and a sequel in many ways, because it's kind of been said that, Pennywise, part of his goal was to kill or prevent the Losers Club from forming because he knows that they were going to kill him. And I thought that was very interesting, and I think that opens a lot of doors. And they even say, with a line of dialogue between Marge and Lily, or at the end of the episode, oh, well, what if he can go backwards and he can target our ancestors? There, you do kind of see that, oh, okay, that's why they're telling this story backwards. That's what they're doing. Maybe in a season 2, we are going to see somebody target the ancestors of Marge or Beverly or Ben or Bill or all that. So that's very interesting. And that's very interesting that, part of his motivation of this cycle was because he knew the Losers Club was coming and he knew they were going to kill him at some point. So I think that's interesting. And I've heard a lot of interesting theories on that. Like, he's kind of stuck in this loop of forever trying to prevent his own demise and failing. Or I've heard the theory that eventually, even though they killed him off, he can just keep going back. He is so powerful that in some ways his death is a rebirth, and he can just keep going back and keep trying to kill the right people and keep going after the ancestors of the Losers Club to alter it to where he lives. And maybe that's a tragic thing that he keeps doing that throughout this season. And yet the more he tries, the more it tries, the more he fails, and he's stuck in this endless loop of trying and failing to prevent his own fate. So I think that's an interesting way to go. And I think there are plenty of avenues that opens. And honestly, guys, if I'm calling a spade, I do think this opens the door for an It Chapter 3. So all of that, I actually, as I've sat on that a little bit, this whole thing, that added element to Pennywise, I think there's a lot of interesting things they can do with that. But where I'm mixed is, I said from the beginning that I didn't want the kids element to this, and I didn't want anything that was going to weaken the Losers Club's story. Because really, I think the story of it is the story of the Losers Club, and Pennywise is a driving force and a huge part of that story. But it's not the other way around. And to me, having so many happy endings for most of these characters, to where after that first episode, when you have clearly set up that, hey, nobody is safe, you only had one of the main characters the rest of the entire season of, the kids and the adults. die the rest of the way. And to have it be such a happy ending for so many of these characters, even Lily, who got tortured, 7 of the 8 weeks and then somehow gets a happy ending here, or at least it seems like it. I don't know, man. And to a certain extent have them defeat Pennywise. I know it's a little bit of a gray area because he went to sleep, the horrific tragedy of the black spot happened, and the only reason he woke up was because the military got involved. But in some ways, to have him be defeated by these kids that aren't the Losers Club, or, tepidly defeated, it does kind of weaken him, man. It kind of weakens Pennywise as a villain, and it kind of weakens the Losers Club story. And I'm sorry. And I know what they're setting up for. Maybe it feels like a happy ending for now, but something's going to happen in season 2 that alters the timeline of these kids. I think that's what they're going for. So maybe this changes, which is why it's more of a mixed ending for me. And I get it too. The ending of having a lot of these characters that we know and love die could be depressing, but I think that felt like a more necessary ending for the story of it and the story they were telling. Yeah, I don't know, man. Again, they've left the door open to change it, but for me, this does kind of weaken the story of the Losers Club. It does weaken Pennywise as a villain. Having him be defeated each cycle is going to get repetitive in and of its own right. That's another worry, is that seeing him be defeated each cycle is going to get repetitive in its own right. So, yeah, overall, just the whole happy ending for the majority of these characters, I don't know. It didn't feel right to me. It does weaken the original story to a certain extent, not to a huge degree, but to some degree. But who knows? They've left the door open with that twist, with that reveal that Pennywise, he can kind of move through time to a certain extent, and he exists in the present, the future, and the past all at the same time. So we'll see what they do with that. Maybe it'll lead to some interesting things that change the outcome we got here. But yeah, for a lot of what this episode did right, I just didn't feel like the happy ending that we got for the most part was correct. Even if it meant like a couple of more characters dying, like Lily dying, or Lily and Charlotte, or whoever. Like, I think that would have fit better. I think right now it feels like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, and it didn't entirely work for me. I hate to say it, like that is a big flaw. That takes a little bit of luster off this season for me now that I'm walking away. Feel like you have weakened Pennywise as a character. You have weakened this, and you have weakened the story of the Losers Club. It does take away from it a little bit for me. As much as I enjoyed this season, and I still will enjoy this season, I'm going to watch the finale again. And for as much as I enjoyed a lot of this episode, this finale, the way they ended it left a somewhat bad taste in my mouth, even though there was parts that I enjoyed, like Rich's spirit coming back to help them, and the eulogy at the funeral and stuff like that. It just was too happy of an ending for the story they were telling up into this point in the season. So, and even though they've left the door open for that to change, and that intrigues me, I am mildly disappointed. And with the ending of this season, that's probably a good thing for me to say, is that I am intrigued but mildly disappointed. That is a good phrase for me to leave off on. That sums up my feelings pretty well. So, okay. Episode 8 of Welcome to Derry, intrigued but mildly disappointing with the way they ended it. But that's going to do it for me today, guys. Hope you enjoyed today's video. What did you think of the episode? Comment below and let me know your thoughts, and I will see you guys later. Okay, take care.